So, hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Quantum Compass. This is episode number 20, which is significant in itself. My name is David, and of course, I'm joined by the wonderful
Bella. Hi, everybody. We're super happy to be here at the 20th wave spell that we have done, the 20th Quantum Compass show. So we're completing a whole cycle for us with you guys following us and learning about the Mayan Sulkin.
Right. This seems to be a time of significant endings and beginnings and endings, and many things coming to a point of culmination, all of which we're going to try and include in today's show, which is about the upcoming wave spell, the Yellow Magnetic Human, which is from October the 7th to October the 19th, as a pretty bonkers looking full moon in Aries that we're going to be deep diving on, and a few other bits and pieces that seem relevant at this point. But as always, Bella, where are we going to start?
With the wave spell, of course. Let me just come here to the presentation.
Right. So this has been a very, very tumultuous week. We are coming into the final days of the blue magnetic storm, which of course one thing leads to another. So we always say this, we are on the final days of this previous wave spell as we record the income. So we're still living out the last few days of the blue storm, which I think has a very profound continuity with the incoming yellow magnetic human. So how does this all come together, Bella?
Right, so we are completing a whole round ourselves of 260 days with this wave spell of the yellow magnetic human. So here we have the glyph. Is this yellow one here on the left, and I have the second version here. I like to show you different designs so that you get familiar with the whole idea of what is it that we're looking at. It is a code. All of the symbolism has to do with codes. And as we've been saying, we are in the blue storm year, and we can see it everywhere happening. We are recording this on the day of liberation during the wave spell of the storm, and we've seen everything that's been going on in the media, in the entertainment industry, with the politicians, with the CEOs that keep on stepping down because they are involved in many of those situations that are being disclosed at the moment and that we have been talking about. But as we've been saying before, this is the storm, the one that will propel us to the next point in our evolution, is the storm of purification, is the storm that is catalyzing everything so we can get to that point of transformation for the collective. And we're clearing every Sunday, we're quickening all of this energy, we're clearing the astrals, we're clearing our physical bodies, our mental bodies, our emotional bodies, so that we can get activated.
Yeah, and with a wave spell such as the blue magnetic storm, it's a little perhaps harder to understand what is it we're manifesting, what is it we're liberating ourselves from. So yesterday was the day of manifestation. Do you have anything you wish to say about that in terms of the wave spell we've just been in? Because I think putting the pieces together is a really important part of what we're going to be looking at, Bella, with the full moon in Aries.
So a day 10 of a wave spell is always the day that manifests whether the obstacles or what you wanted to manifest. So what part of you, what you were trying to manifest, have you been seeing? Have you been seeing more chaos and more storm? Or have you been seeing the new earth that you're ready to step into? If it's more of the first one, that means we still have a few more things that need to be put in place and cleared so that we can release and move on.
I mean, yeah, I'd say from the last couple of days, what's come up certainly in this space is the manifestation of a plan moving forwards, but also the manifestation of our own personal storms, whatever they might look like. But also with the energy being so instant, now being in the 5D energy of New Earth, which we'll talk a little bit more about. We did share some of that in our video that just came out yesterday, Heaven on Earth. Many people probably might not necessarily agree with that statement. We're going to explain a little bit more about what we mean by that. But also with the energy being so fast, something can come up in our awareness, and actually it can be liberated almost instantly through internal alchemy if we're prepared to let go of something, if we're prepared to look at something.
So the beauty of the storm is that it's really strong, but it catalyzes, it makes the change quicker, and it will get us to a point of balance, which is where we want to get to, because it's a rhythmic storm. It's all about coming to a point of balance in our daily lives. But we are finishing this very intense storm. Then there'll be a few more weeks of weathering that storm. You know, what happens after the storm? You need to make sure that you clear up the debris, reassess the damage, and then we move on.
Right, and I'm just rereading all of the things you put here about this year of the Blue Storm, Bella, and it's kind of what we're saying. And if you've done lots of your inner work, if you've come to this place, you've probably been feeling the really, really positive effects of the solar flares, of the eclipses. Maybe you've had big realizations in consciousness, and you know that's done through the transmutation of the energies. If you haven't done that, then it could be manifesting for you in a slightly different way, in a storm-like way, we can say. But that's not to say that we should try and resist it or push it away, because that doesn't really help.
So just in the last few days during the eclipse, we had two of the strongest solar flares. One was an X flare of 7 points, and the other one was an X flare of 9. I think it's the highest of these sun cycles. So we are getting the energy of the sun to propel and help us in this storm moment, which is, okay, forced evolution, last push on these at this moment.
And if we think about the energy of the sun, it's the energy of transformation and fire. And so many people have been expressing different physical symptoms coming up. And maybe what we can understand from that is where we have density in the physical body is pointing to where we've got density in our emotional body. And the sun is also on his own journey. He's also wanting to transform his own density and to make up for his own karmic issues here in this universe. So we're all on this journey together, which I think is really cool. But also we have to understand what is going on. And I think as we move into the astrology later, we'll see the temptation to put it onto other people is probably going to be quite high in many cases, but that's not the point of all of this, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, so let me continue. This is the energy of the third moon, which is called the electric moon of service, and it runs from September 20th through October 17th. It's the energy of showing more of that artistic and vulnerable side, of helping children, of helping the vulnerable people here, of wounds, and showing who's been a victim here as well, of innocence, how it may have been affected. So at this point, with this totem of the deer, we want to continue to be of service wherever we can, with everything that's been going in North Carolina and in many other places, in Tennessee, in Georgia. We've seen lots of things going on. So where can we help and be of service? Because then towards the end of the wave spell, we're going to move into another very interesting moon, which is the self-existing moon of form, which runs from October 18 to November 14. And this is a completely different energy. We're going to go into the energy of mystery and darkness and more scorpionic energy. Because the owl, which is the totem animal of that moon, we'll talk more about it in the future, but it's all to do with that not fear of looking at the occult and the magic, the gift of prophecy, looking into secrets which are being now fully exposed, we know, on the TV and on the media. So many other energies will activate towards the end of this wave spell.
Yeah, and just to add to something, I'm looking here at my kind of conglomerate astro diary, and the day that starts, October the 18th, is day 12 of this wave spell, but it's also the blue night, which is very interesting because that speaks very much of the astral realms, of the dream space, and perhaps what before was the occult.
Okay. So we now go into this wave spell, which is called the Yellow Human, and is the fourth wave spell of this castle. We're finishing a cycle of 52 days here. It's the second castle out of the whole Solkin. And what this wave spell is going to show us is everything to do with ripening, a ripening point after 3 previous wave spells. It starts here on day 92 or kin 92, and it runs up to day 104 or kin 104. Again, here I'm just highlighting Eb is the glyph, the Mayan archetype. And what is it? qualities does it have? It has to do with choices. That is going to be the most important point of this wave spell, where you are being given choices after they present a lot of information and you have lots of insights and realizations. What is your choice at this point? It's a point of harvest. It's a point of gratitude. Many things happen for us to learn about it. So we need to come to the point of learning the lessons of whatever has happened to us. This glyph is also connected to the wisdom from our ancestors, to free will. That is why it's connected to free will and choice. What are you going to choose to believe? What vibration are you going to choose to be at when all of those things are presented? We're going to talk in the astrological part about Mars, because there's going to be a lot of emotional energy, a lot of triggering energy. But what are you going to choose? Are you going to choose to go 5D? Or are you going to be immersed in the emotional, revenge, aggressive energy? It's a very important point of choice here, where we need to use our wisdom and our intelligence at this point, our wisdom and insight, our compassion for everything that has happened. At this point in this wave spell, we want to show all the work that we have been doing for the past few years. We want to be a positive influence on others, because it's also a moment of our electromagnetic tuning. And what does that mean? It means that according to your choice, you're going to be on a higher vibration, which will affect the others in a positive way, or you're going to sync with all of the emotional disturbance that is going to be going on for the next few weeks. This energy of Ebb, or the yellow human, is also connected to being an open vessel, a chalice, like the story of the cosmic humans, where the chalice of lots of different codes. And this is what is now getting ready to be activated if you are able to choose the higher vibration or being into the 5D.
Right, which is really what this process is all about. It's about transformation and becoming higher dimensional beings in a more dense form, but without the shadow that has come with that over the last, well, we can say probably series of millennia, although that's very linear. And of course, one of the things that we have been talking a lot about, Bella, is the breaking down of linear time as it's perceived, or perceived rather, through the Gregorian calendar. So there are many things that are coming to a confluence point, not least of all time itself.
Good. So with this glyph, we also reconnect with the sacred path, which represents that capacity of walking wisely according to the truth. Because now we have enough information to discern and make choices again. And so it is what defines conscious from unconscious. And this glyph, this archetype, has the action of influence. We're talking about a positive influence in our surroundings. The essence of wisdom. Let's reconnect with that inner wisdom after all of the inner work we've been doing. And the power of free will. Where are you going to go with this information? Are you ready to step on the sacred path and 5D? Or are you still going to be stuck with everything that is disturbing and horrible, which is coming out to the light? The knowledge of truth is what sets us free in order to manifest the human power of free will. So we're ready to enter this sacred path. This is a very important wave spell after the storm, but it has its shadow. So the shadow work to do over this period has to do with feeling like lack of abundance, feeling that there are going to be many changes in the banking system, in the way we trade. There could be news of scarcity or whatever there is out there. But are you going to go into that point of feeling lack of abundance and disconnection from manifestation? Or are you going to step into your power and understand we are all energy and we can attract and manifest and trade and find new ways of trading, new ways of creating abundance? Another shadow of this wave spell has to do with giving priority to your intellect, trying to find a logical or trying to reason your way through it, like the way it's been before. Oh, well, that doesn't make sense because I've been told this, or I've always believed this, or this is not the way that I was, whatever way that you're trying to block through your mind, through your ideas. We need to be able to go beyond and bring the intuition and our heart into whatever we're trying to achieve. So more shadow for this wave spell is having a busy mind or taking in too much of the information to a point of just blocking yourself. And so just in general, not trusting the universe is part of the shadow to overcome during this wave spell. Some more tips on the transformation, it would be to connect with others, to start creating new networks that could be helpful for ourselves. For example, with farmers, with healers, with plant medicine people, or whatever life or new reality you want to experience, start creating those connections. Honor diversity, because we all have something to offer. We all have a gift. We all have a talent. Whether you're an artist, whether you're a teacher, whatever you are, you always have something to offer to the others. And what is beautiful about the Solkin and the Mayan cosmology is that you get to reconnect with your talents, with your gifts, and with your mission. So you know what your place is in all of this beautiful tapestry with the rest of the people around us. And some more transformation, what else can we do? We can reconnect with our divine essence, self-nurture, very important at this moment. Empty your mind, do something that will disconnect you from all of the chaos energy that is going on in the media and outside, because we will see it more and more with people as all of this information is getting to their mind, is triggering the cognitive dissonance, the triggers of whatever they haven't resolved for themselves. So we still recommend not to engage in a lot of that emotional chaos that could be happening out there. But as you find your sacred space, then you can be open your chalice to receive more of the light energy that is coming through the sun. We'll talk about some of the beautiful stars that have been activating since the eclipse. And it's a point here to expand your consciousness. Going to 5D or going to 5 Earth is about expanding our consciousness so we can live that experience of a new reality.
We're going to be looking at all of these points in the astrology in a minute too, but I think one of the ones that's really important, Bella, just that's I've made some notes on here, is the lack of abundance, disconnect from manifestation. I mean, these are all really down to a lack of trust in the universe, a lack of trust in our heart connection, a lack of trust in our higher self. And when we put all of these into the same place, we're really saying that we're having the absence of the goddess. And that is a big part of the energy that is happening right now and is going to continue happening, I think, as we all evolve and ascend with Mother Earth. It's a part of the process, but for sure, we can see out there already in the ethers, there are many people who are expressing lack. I don't have finances, I don't have this, and in a place of fear about it. All of which is kind of understandable because we've been programmed to be that way. But we're here to say it doesn't have to be that way. Having lots of money is not necessarily a precursor to doing lots of cool things, or even the things that your heart wants. That's what we've been programmed. I can't do this because I don't have the money to do it. If you let go and surrender, you might be quite surprised at what the universe can offer you, right?
I think one of the things that we need to start understanding is that in a new earth, the system doesn't depend on paper money. That is not even backed by gold or silver. The new earth will be where you are able to trade according to your gifts and talents and services and products that are in accordance with Mother Earth. That is where I see it going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to see very quickly in the next few weeks the introduction of the quantum financial system, which for most people probably sounds like pie in the sky because they have no idea what it's about. However, at the quantum level, we all understand we are quantum beings. And as Bella just said, we bring in quantum gifts, all of which have their own currency, but it's a different kind of currency to the one that we've been enslaved with, which is the make-believe numbers on a screen and paper that have numbers written on them. Mm-hmm. That's all part of the old system. That's probably the scope of many other deep dives, many other videos, you know, that other people have done. But we just want to say that because it's something that has been very much a part of the wider spiritual community ever since I entered into this community many moons ago. I've often perceived that that's something that blocks people. And really what the block is not the finances, it's the block here at the heart level to that higher self connection. And when we're connected to our higher selves, really we're connected to the universe. And from that perspective, that aspect of us only ever wants the best for us. And that, I think, is a big part of the anchoring that's going to help Certainly helped me in the past, but I think going to help many other people, Bella, become more fifth dimensional, multidimensional beings.
That's why it was so important to have done the work around core wounds and about feeling that you deserve, that you are enough, that you can create new things, that life can look like you want it in your dreams. Which is something that once you go to school, they tell you, no, that's not the way it is. You've got to be square and follow this path. But then now we are being the creators. So you get to dream and you get to create what you want for yourself, for your children, and the future. So this is the moment. It's a very important moment of choices.
And the other thing, just though, I wanted to allude to the 7 generations, the sevenfold effect. This is the yellow human. We're also taking into account 7 generations of our ancestors, 7 generations of our descendants. So with the ancestors, what we are doing, if we are consciously aware of ancestral bloodline traumas through mother, father line, masculine, feminine lines, with conscious awareness, we can bring all of that to an end now. Probably many of you watching these videos have been doing that work and understand more deeply. And if you don't, I think it's going to be coming up in family dynamics pretty soon. However, also 7 generations downstream, we're making decisions in the same way the First Nations people look at this is like, if I make a decision now, how will it play out in 7 generations? And have I thought that all the way through to its end conclusion? And if I haven't, maybe I should. Maybe I need to do some reflection work, which I think is where we're going to see Jupiter stationary retro in Gemini as how am I reviewing the decisions I've made? But we'll get to that in a minute.
Good. So as usual, I recommend you to follow the questions for every single day of the wave spell. Have a purpose defined, you know, when you start this wave spell. Identify what is it that you want to do. Where are the choices that you're ready to make at this point? There is still going to be chaos energy outside, but we need to be able to choose our path according to, with wisdom and through our intuition as well. And this is a good point to share that we released chapter 11, which was all about liberation in the middle of this storm. And I think it was very necessary and very synchronistic. It needed to be the chapter of liberation for those of you doing the navigation guide to quantum consciousness. And we're about to record the next step, which goes hand in hand with this energy we just described, and is collaboration, cooperation. How are we going to create a new network for our new Earth?
And because it's quantum, it literally does what it says on the tin. It's a navigation guide to quantum consciousness. And if you follow each of the chapters, each of the steps, you will be amazed at what can start to unfold, as indeed the people who've been following us up until this point have been expressing to us in their feedback and has been happening to us.
So even this morning we were talking about the amount of emails and messages we've been receiving of people that feel lost and they don't know what they're going to do. They left the job, they left the partner, they made some of the changes and transformation that needed to happen. But now what's next? That's where there is a navigation guide. So the navigation guide gives you the step-by-step, chapter by chapter on how to get to the other side, to the firm land.
Right, so the navigation guide, along with the show, the Quantum Compass and Bella's Mind, Time and Magic, calls all of the things that we've been doing as much for ourselves, really, as everybody else. But we're offering this because we understand the need for it, is to create stability, something to hold on to when the full collapse of the astral realm matrix, which is fully underway, and I'm going to share more about it in a minute. But when that happens, many people are going to find themselves all at sea. Bit like Saturn in Pisces right now. Oh, I've got my structure, but where is it? I don't know what to hold on to. These guides that we've been putting together, our anchor point, the quantum compass, is our way of navigating through all of this. Yeah.
So, and the fourth moon I was talking about with the totem of the owl is about structure. How are we going to find structure after all of this collapse of the stormy season?
Right, and we're being, I mean, actually, it sounds kind of scary. It's like, oh, I don't have any structure, I don't have any form. But actually, what if we flip that and say, hey, I've got a brand new opportunity to create a new structure and form that's much more in alignment with me rather than something that's been given to me or us, the collective. That actually is really exciting.
And it's going to be more authentic, more original, more more connected to what you've been dreaming about.
More authentic.
Yeah.
Likely.
Good. So let's go into the astrology, and we just wanted to mention briefly the big eclipse we just came from.
Yeah. I mean, it's worthy of a lot of time. We did already cover it. We did a video yesterday, Heaven on Earth. From an astral perspective, what we can see is that the time frame between what happens in the astral world, the fourth dimensional, particularly the lower astral, the human emotional realm, into the third dimension, into visibility, is now the compression point. It's not quite 0 point, but it almost is. The 0 point will come when everything starts to ascend at once. We are very, very close to that. However, what I would like to suggest is if you are watching the goggle box or even dipping in and out of it, you're going to have all kinds of material coming at you. A lot of it's disclosure, a lot of it's super uncomfortable and almost vomiting to watch. However, it is part of what needs to be looked at, even just briefly. What is happening in the war situations is also somehow the end of a cycle. It's biblical. It's the rebalancing of a lot of karma between many beings and nations. And from an astral perspective, what I've started to understand is that we should not try to make sense of it by taking sides. That doesn't work. There is really no right or wrong. There is just a sequence of events that needs to play out. And, you know, what is heaven? Well, heaven really is the fifth dimension. It's the realm of balance, of non-duality, of a heart connection to our higher selves. And for most of us on the planet, for most of our lives, it's been somewhat absent. Some of us maybe who are more psychic or empathic have been able to dip in and out of those realms, particularly through medicine journeys, working with sacred plants, etc. Maybe some of you are naturally in that space, but generally it's been difficult to connect into that consistently. However, what has happened since the eclipse is that has changed. And if you have been able to work with the energies of the sun, transmute things that no longer serve you, as many of you have also emailed us to share, it's like, yes, it's been a little rough, but wow, I'm having lots of realizations. And I seem to be having lots of downloads on the Galactic Activation Portal days, which is also something that we've realized, right? So when we think about that, really what we're doing is connecting to the universe and receiving information. Now, if we use our conscious awareness with intention and attention, we can almost ask about anything, really. We can access the Akashic records of ourselves or even the universe. But in order to do that and receive the authentic answers without corruption, without manipulation, without toxicity, then we have to have got this material out of our energy field, which is really what's incoming. So even if it looks bad and maybe even feels bad, that doesn't mean that it is bad, because heaven exists inside of us. And I think that is the big shift. We don't have to go anywhere. It's not over there. It's not up there or down there. It's actually in here. And we're going to start to realize that we are these incredible quantum beings who actually already exist in New Earth.
So what I wanted to share about these eclipse, which we didn't mention in the previous show, was how it was at 10 degrees of Libra, and that connects to some of the fixed stars that deal with those issues. The first one was Minkar, which is at around 11 of Libra, and that fixed star is part of the stellar nations and it's part of the bird nation. So again, the birds are coming now.
I think it's part of the Corvus constellation, is that right?
So this one is talking about abuse of power and the alliances with the darker ETs, like the Greys and the Arthur gods, and how that technology was part of our reality, and that was part of the control mechanism that we had, and people didn't even know about it. So that one has come to an end, and it's something that needed to be put in the awareness. We've been clearing this in our Sunday clearings, which we'll talk more about. We even mentioned that teaching on the last one. The next star that is fixed as well is Al-Shiba, which has to do with treason, and treason from lots of people that we trusted because they were in that mode of being greedy and ambition, and they wanted more power, more money, more mansions, more millions, more billions, and so they betrayed us all in order to do that. This includes politicians, big corporations, entertainment, you name it. Even some religious people are involved in all of these disclosure and scandal. The next fixed star at around 10 of Libra as well is Gina, spelled Gienah. And this one is about being weak and service to self. So if any of those topics are now being super triggered for the collective because of the eclipse trying to flash all of that out, but they're coming up for you, do address them, because it's the moment to review and finalize those issues, because then at the same time, the positive side of the activation of this eclipse was to do with the feminine path. It's about helping the children, including everybody, protecting the children, protecting the youngsters, nurturing everybody, and creating a new path that is more from the cosmic mother, you know, that wants everybody to be okay and well protected.
Yeah, I think this also is going to lead very much into the realm of victims and projections about I'm a victim, this happened to me, and that's an easy place to go to, because in many ways we've all been victims of something, but at a soul level, particularly the fifth dimensional non-dual level, there is karma and there's a balancing out, and that normally means that at some point the victim has been a perpetrator, whether it's in this life or in other timelines. That's a more lofty soul expression, but if we want to become fully authentic and integrate all of our lower codes, that also means working with the other timelines where our soul has an expression going on. And in the great scheme of things, it's all part of the story of being down
I think that is why the wave spell is the wave spell of choices. Do you choose to have the higher perspective and the teaching of all of these lifetime and incarnations, everything coming to an end, and so that you can move on to the next level, or are we stuck in the other?
Yeah, and also I think is a good trick is to understand that maybe some points in your life you did some things that you're not so happy about, but maybe there were extenuating circumstances for that. And so I think the trick is not to be in a place of judgment when you see others in similar positions say, oh, well, actually, I can sort of get that and I can have compassion.
Even if a different scale.
Even if a different scale, yeah, it's a fractal. But this is really a lot of what this next wave spell in the astrology is about. And also just to add to what Bella was saying, I was saying that these fixed stars are in the Corvus constellation in the sky, which is really about the blackbirds, the ravens, the cormorants. And so they're looking at the shadow side of the world that we live in, and they want to bring it to the surface, which I think is what that sun on Libra wanted to do, is to illuminate it so that we can integrate.
Well, the positive stars, and we're still on this slide, were being the Matrix, which is a Pegasus and cosmic human star, Diadema, which is a cosmic human star, Purima and Auva, all of those to do with the womb of the female, protection of the animals, of the plants, being more empathic, being more like a grandmother.
Right, and we already covered those stars in the other video. I know that you went into that in more detail, but a bit. And maybe some of you are watching this and thinking, like, how come these guys keep mentioning stellar nations? The stellar nations is a really beautiful pathway that looks at the 13 archetypal aspects of our DNA coding, which is actually how we start to get integrated at the higher level, or sorry, activated. But in order to get to that place, we need to be integrated with all of the lower notes. And really, it's not as complicated as it sounds. It uses fixed star, we can say astrology, which is really mapped out by our natal birth charts. So it's the next level, really, of not just integrating the planets in our universe, but integrating the star systems.
Galactic code.
Our galactic code. So you can find out more about that either directly with the Stellar Nations People in Hungary, or you can see the 15-part pathway that we laid out with our sister Leslie Shankman last year, which I would say has been a big part of our own journey, right? And understanding
on the platform of QPW.
Yeah. So that's by way of a review. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Bella, at this time?
No, let's go to this, the next one, which is the list of the important astrological events.
Yeah, so compared to some of the previous wave spells, I would say there's not so much to look at in terms of some of what we might call the sort of minor transits, although they can often be very powerful. We're going to focus most of our energy and attention today on October the 17th, the day of liberation in this wave spell, which also has a full moon in Aries, because it has lots of loops, particularly going back to the full moon eclipse on April the 8th earlier this year. We are now coming into the place of illumination of that. And it's something that we've studied a lot, Bella, right? Which is eclipses and portals and how information gets obscured or gets passed through them into different time spaces and tracking loops and deltas. Well, if something is eclipsed, it means that we don't get to see it. We might feel some of it, but we don't necessarily get to see it. And so whatever was hidden from our view during that period of the April 8th eclipse, which was a lot, from a prophetic point of view, we can say that some of the things that appeared in the astral planes at that point are now appearing in the 3D on the television. However, we can also understand that we're coming to the culmination of that very, very powerful cross eclipse, particularly for those people in Texas. The two eclipses have looped also back to the end of October. October the 28th in 2023. They both passed over the same point and created this cross effect, which we can say, which very much links to the Christ consciousness. So there are big energies at play, and they've been carefully, we can say, synchronized to create certain effects that are absolutely going to assist us in this moment of transformation. So one of the things I wanted to point to here, this is just a chart for the beginning of the wave spell. Please do take your time to study it. Also included a couple of extra things because of this, which may or not be relevant to you, but wanted to include them. We've included the asteroid Texas because that's where this eclipse cross happened. Also, I wanted to look into the energy of, we can say, Great Mother Turtle. And so I found two asteroids. One is called Turtle Star there at 24 degrees of Leo, and then we also have Testudo, which is the Latin word for really a tortoise, which is at 14 degrees of Sagittarius. And so in that way we sort of have the water turtle, and we have the land turtle or tortoise, which I think somehow also hold the masculine and feminine yin and yang versions of those really, really beautiful, very wise old beings who swim the seas, the oceans, and walk the land. And when they're left to do their own thing, they roam far and wide, and so they see a lot. So just wanted to include those. Also got our good old friend over there, Chaos, at 3 degrees of Cancer. So we put that into the mix also. Some of this is for your own reference, really, to have fun with. We might be picking apart some of it a bit later on as we get into the full moon energy, but really wanted to pick out Jupiter station retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini, which it then spends until early February of next year, retrograding back to 11 degrees of Gemini. And as you were talking, Bella, about the energy of the wave spell and honoring diversity, I kind of got this impression of like Jupiter wanting us to look at our Gemini selves, which could also be diversity, but on its own, that could also be polarization. Your view, my view, I'm right, you're wrong, blah, 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 those kinds of things. And if we're honoring diversity, we can accept that, hey, I have my version of something and you have yours. It might not be the same. That's okay. That's diversity. And we need to honor that within ourselves and honor the other.
And one of the main things that we are meant to be learning out of all of this experience of this incarnation is transcending duality, transcending the polarity of that, the good, the bad, who's right, who's wrong, because it's all about perspective, and we all have different beliefs, different views, different truths. So here is about everybody having a voice, everybody having the right to say what they think and their opinion without being judged or without having to tell the other person to shut up and you're not allowed to, that's not right.
Which we can already see that playing out in the very big conversation that's about freedom of speech and whether we are responsible enough to have freedom of speech, or whether somebody else makes a decision that we don't like what you're saying, so we're going to shut you up. It's another form of that version. But also what's just occurred to me, Bella, is I didn't put it here on this slide, but day 2 of this wave spell, October the 8th, is a galactic activation portal day.
We have 2, yeah.
Yeah, we have 2, but this one is on the day of challenge, of polarization, but it's with the energy of the Skywalker. So I would like to suggest that on that day, perhaps we can reach out to the universe and say, I want to have more clarity about the things that polarize me, and using the energy of the Skywalker, who can transcend the 3rd and 4th dimensional restrictions, which sometimes we can get boxed in by, to ask for information from the universe. Please help me to understand why I am being polarized, not like why someone doing to me.
Higher perspective.
The higher perspective, yeah. And that's how we can transcend this energy, which Jupiter also wants us to review. And as such, this kind of period of Jupiter retro in Gemini gives great potential to review and change our belief systems, which I think is pretty important at this time, because it's our belief systems that create these sort of polarizing effects. We then move on to some more kind of stationary energy, which is Pluto going stationary direct. So as Jupiter stops to go backwards, Pluto stops to go forwards at this very potent 29 degrees of Capricorn, the anaretic degree. And then just a couple of days later, Mercury squares Pluto in that place at 29 degrees of Libra. So with Pluto going stationary direct to Capricorn, many other astrologers, not just us, but I would suggest, have indicated that this is the point where the full collapse of the matrix starts to happen visibly for us. Now, we've been going through this review process and everything has been coming up into our awareness, but there also has to be a process of removal, collapse. So I would maybe think that this indicates to me that from roughly the middle of October, we're going to see very palpable structural collapse, yeah, in the 3D world, because at the astral realm, it's already happened. That was part of the eclipse energy, quite startling, even in the astral realm. And so, again, we are going to share some plants later on to help us ground these energies. It's really important not to go into a place of overwhelm, but to be in a place of trust, because many people who don't watch these kinds of shows or anything like this at all have none of these anchors that many of you wonderful brothers and sisters probably already have. And even if we have some troubles, we do feel or face some anxiety or overwhelm, it's part of the process. But the trick is, how do we transform ourselves out of it? I think, again, that sort of skywalking energy of day 2 is going to help.
I think that Pluto at that honorary degree is also telling us, the completion of the demolition process of everything that doesn't serve us anymore is here. It does take us up to the 19th of November when it enters finally Aquarius.
Yeah,
so that's where we are extending the clearings we're doing up to November time, because all of this debris in the astrals and in the physical will have to be cleared up.
Right, and as that happens, you're right, on November the 19th, that will bring to the close the period of Pluto and Capricorn, which won't happen again for another 248 years, if indeed the astrology of our part of the universe stays the same, which may be something that's going to change, but I think that's a future video in the making. Also, just wanted to come back to Mercury squaring Pluto, which I think is really going to be, because it's on day 13, which again is a number of the goddess, but it's also with the glyph of the white mirror. So I think there could be a possibility there to see how we're expressing our Plutonian side. Is something coming up that's triggering us because it's in a square? Are we venting, or we can say projecting, onto somebody else something that really is ours to look at? Have you any thoughts about that, Bella? Or no? Okay. So, and then finally, before we come to the full moon on October the 15th, we actually have quite a nice. Actually, sorry, we've skipped ahead here. We have Uranus in Taurus opposing Venus in Scorpio. Now, that also I think is quite interesting. It's the day 8 of this incoming wave spell, which is the integration of the blue magnetic storm. So that potentially could be quite a combustible day. The energies of Uranus in Taurus, but also opposing Venus in Scorpio, is likely to bring up, I think, a lot of emotional heart stuff. Lots to say about that, perhaps in different ways, but this is just the overview. So then we have Neptune trining Venus. So Venus is in on the action, I think, wanting to look at things happening around the heart, looking at the energies of creativity. Have we managed to transcend them? Are we able to deal with shocking news from the heart? Are we able to go above that? Or are we going to perhaps get dragged into more scorpionic ways of looking at things?
I think that trine is probably, it's reconnecting us to the goddess energy, which is, nature and the cosmic mother and everything else. But it's making us feel more spiritual again, even to the masses, because the majority of people don't even think about being spiritual or anything. And we are all already spiritual. We're spirits living this 3D experience, but people are caught up thinking they are 3D. They are humans living with a little bit of spiritual here and there, but it's the opposite. And I think that is going to help more people reveal the veils of, oh, we're all of that. We're multidimensional, and we're spiritual, and we're this, and we're that. And
also, with it being Taurus and Scorpio, this is the financial axis. And so with that Uranus in Taurus, there could be sudden shifts in wealth, sudden transferences of wealth. And also perhaps with it being Uranus and with the incoming energy of Pluto moving into Aquarius, I think we all need to be prepared for a different type of currency transaction. It's going to be very different, perhaps even more digital, certainly more quantum. Uranus really represents the energy of the quantum space. And also sudden innovation. So for some people who have not put any attention to the change in the financial situation, it could be very, very startling, because the quantum system of the future is based on integrity, of quantum contribution, being in service to others, not necessarily being in service to self, which was the program that was given with the old paradigm, paper money. So something just to put into your awareness and to start contemplating, because I think that we're going to have a big shakeup in how we see abundance.
I agree.
So that's it for the overview, Bella. Now, Oh, yeah.
Again, look at that amount of squares and things.
Yeah, so full moon in Aries at 24 degrees. This is very much, like I said earlier, the loop back to the April 8th eclipse, which was also with a Chiron Cazimi. It was a very, very strong day. I remember it very well. Life-changing for many of us. I certainly would put myself into that bracket. And I would say, Bella, that life has never really been quite the same since.
Well, what we know is that we jump cuboids, and cuboids is the structure of the universe that we live in. And so we went an octave up in the last cuboid, and now everybody gets to jump as well into this new cuboid of the universe, meaning that we get to access the new earth, we get to access what we are creating as a new reality, which is less dense, but you need to keep on leaving all of this baggage behind so you can keep on moving forward, because it's a much lighter space.
Yeah, and Chiron is very much in the mix here again. We can see that the moon is just in a relatively close orb of 3 degrees. Of course, opposing the sun there in Libra 2 at 24 degrees. So what can we understand from this? Well, I think this is a moment where the wounded healer aspect of ourselves, or just the wounded aspect of ourselves, is coming up for its final review and seeing how are we dealing with our wounding and how are we transforming that into something perhaps more positive. And of course, at the same time, we have this really what is a grand cross going on with Mars at 22 degrees of Cancer and Pluto still hovering around that anaretic degree, 29 of Capricorn. And so we've got lots of squares and oppositions going on here.
And so I'll start just by mentioning that conjunction of the moon and Chiron, which is going to tell us there is still a final deeper bit of healing that needs to happen. It's just that deeper bit, the very core one that needs to go, because it has no place moving forward. And it could be the hardest things for us to accept. Maybe the things that we keep on judging on the other people. But it's actually something that is within us too. So what is the final bit of luggage or shadow or density that you can get rid of here? Because it's for the collective as well. It's for the individual, but for the collective too.
And we can see here also that the sun is conjunct Juno, right? So there's also, I think, going to be an illumination of our sense of commitment, or maybe where we've committed to something, thinking that other people were committed in the same way, only to find out that they weren't, they had a different perspective on it. That could well come up in relationships.
Yep.
So that's something to have in your awareness. What I think is really exciting though, Bella, and this is something I want to highlight, is if we look down here at the very anaretic degree of Scorpio, which with some difficult fixed star astrology has our friend Hidalgo, the warrior priest, conjunct Venus.
Nice, the goddess.
The goddess, because that was one of the things about Hidalgo, is he not only rallied many diverse groups of people for freedom, for revolution, but it was under the banner of the Lady of Guadalupe, which of course is another aspect of the goddess. And then right next to that, we have another aspect of the goddess, the wonderful lioness queen Sekhmet, who has just nudged over into that very spiritual sign of Sagittarius. It's almost like she's gone ahead of Venus to check out the territory. Hey, we just went through that very, very tough dark night of the soul, otherwise known as Scorpio. And we crossed the 29th anaretic degree, which is probably the toughest part of the Scorpio spectrum, with lots of tricky fixed star astrology. And but it was done with the energy of the warrior, supporting the goddess, Venus being protected by that warrior army, but with the head of the army, the queen, already being the, we can say, the protagonist to nudge us over into, I would say, the more happy spiritual energies of Sagittarius.
Yeah, what I believe is that the great felines will be very present in our energy from now on. We all have those codes. So what part of your feline energy, which is always trying to make sure that the goddess energy is there, is protected, the children are protected, the fighting for freedom is always the main cause.
Yeah, and you know, we've mentioned this before because it actually really includes nearly all of the slower moving planets, but there are a series of sextiles that link each of these. So we've got here at 29 degrees of Scorpio, these energies that are sextiling Pluto, which of course is the one of the rulers of Scorpio at 29 degrees of Capricorn, that's wanting to bring to light all of the indiscretions against the feminine, but also the children, which I think is really, really important. And of course, that itself is also in a sextile to Neptune in Pisces, which is also in a sextile to Uranus in Taurus. And that also is in a sextile to Mars, a slightly wider one in Cancer, which is also in itself in a sextile to the sacred flame of Vesta in Virgo. So we've got this really beautiful, basically whole zodiac linked with goddess energy, with the energy of change. And I would say that to me, Bella, indicates that we are here at a really, really beautiful pivot point that just needs that final push over the line. That's the warrior cat queen Sekhmet, which of course in the stellar nations is linked to leadership. The winged lions is showing us it's all right. I've already done my part. I'm ahead of you guys. I've taken preparing the territory, and all we've got to do now is just work out some of these other bits and pieces. And hey, even in the stellar nation stories, the winged lions also had a fall, which they are also needing to correct, which led them to not being quite the leaders that they wanted to be, which we can also see on our own stage. Probably there are a few leaders who have made mistakes, but are essentially good beings who want to rectify that, which is where that whole sense of not being in a polarized, judgmental state about things that people may have done in the past, but have taken a lot of time to do their shadow work, to do the inner work, and actually have transcended their, we can say, dualistic transgressions.
Yeah. So it is clear that it's a difficult time because of the amount of squares. And these squares are going to go for a few weeks. That's what we keep on thinking of. Okay, by mid to end November, we should be out of the most difficult chaos energy, because there is going to be a lot of emotional release. So that is something you want to be aware of. A lot of people around us are going to have that emotional response and triggers, and so it's up to us to understand everybody's going through it because it's the last flash. So what do we have to do? We want to hold space for us, for the others, find a space where we can go and deal with the emotional stuff. Is not to bypass a spiritual bypass. We still need to take whatever, be responsible. Okay, this one is mine. I have to go and deal with it, rather than project it to other people. Go to your sacred space and try to deal with it with whatever tools you have.
And, you know, I didn't include this on this chart here, Bella, but this full moon is conjunct Aries and Chiron.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that there could be a lot of that angry feminine energy of like, oh, you did this to us, and oh, it's time for revenge, and all of those kinds of discord and chaos energies perhaps being vented from not necessarily just females, but from our feminine sides, as we reintegrate the return of the goddess, which in itself is the fifth dimensional energy coming back online. And as that comes back online, we're all going to have that powerful, great feline aspect activated within us, which opens the heart to many, many beautiful things. But in order to do that, we have to cross this kind of, I wouldn't say boundary is the wrong word, but this kind of important point, what Sekhmet is showing us as she crossed from Scorpio into Sagittarius.
Yeah, and again, it does look tense. It does look a little bit difficult, but we'll give you some plans to work with, and keep on using your spiritual tools. We also have the navigation guide, which should be something that will help us navigate through all of this chaos energy. But definitely come back to your heart and your grounding practices. Whatever you have as a grounding practice, whether it is through art, I don't know, knitting, painting, going to the trees, fishing, something that makes you feel like, okay, I'm ready to ground and feel like I've got this.
Yeah, and also just to say, with Mercury entering Scorpio here, you know, sometimes with the Scorpio energy, there's a tendency to go to the worst case scenario, and it's a Scorpio trick to go to that place, deal with the worst case scenario, and even if that's not the truth, it's like, okay, I've already dealt with the worst case scenario, so anything that's not that is better than that. However, that's okay as long as you keep it to yourself. If you start projecting that out and projecting worst case scenarios into other people, you're then kind of giving them that energy, which is not necessarily what they need or even something that they ask for. So just to be aware of that. And however, it's also going to be in a positive aspect with Saturn coming into the coming, we can say, days, as because Mercury moves very fast. So that's going to stabilize that energy as we round out this wave spell and as we move into the next wave spell, which is obviously coming after all of this. So I think what is really interesting is that when we look at the energy of the cross eclipses that happened, they did happen over Texas, hence why I've included that asteroid here. in the mix. But it feels very much better like it's a Sodom and Gomorrah moment, or we can say like Jonah and the whale, which many people picked up on the flight path of that eclipse across back in October of last year and also of April this year. With the name or the city of Nineveh, which is one of the great cities of the Sumerian Babylonian period, which also had to fall. So the more we look,
Babylon is falling again.
Babylon is falling again. This is utterly biblical. It is epic. What we are seeing in the Middle East is also part of that process correcting itself. We are in a great correction of time itself, which is super exciting, but could be a little messy as that correction happens. But if we can hold in our hearts that this is something that's for everybody's highest good, then it actually makes it all a lot easier to
all
deal
the
with.
depravity we're getting to
Right.
hear about with these elites.
Yeah.
That's also part of the Babylon ways that need to go away now.
Yeah, I think Sodom and Gomorrah and Jonah and the whale are really the previous times of this divine, we can say, judgment. This is Judgment Day, really, and I don't want that to sound more than it is, but when we stand at the pearly gates and our hearts are weighed on those scales, how heavy are our hearts? Have we done our inner work?
And to understand, it's not us judging other
No,
people.
no.
That's something else.
No, it's not even really a judgment. It's just a review and a recognition. It's like, well, have you done all of the things that you needed to do to balance out the light and the dark within you? And if you haven't, and there's still way too much dark there, it could be a little painful because you need to let go of that density and balance things back out. So, yeah, it's not we're going to sit in judgment on anybody or God is judging you. It's an inner review or reflection. So
yeah, because we chose to be here,
yeah,
and we chose the experiences because we knew we were going to be able to transcend them. So to encourage you all to just look at the deepest fear that you haven't been able to look at up to this moment, because it's going to be just there, bubbling up to the surface. So just better to look at it and try to work through it.
Right, that's it really. So with that in mind, perhaps we'll move on to the last part of the show, and just look at what we're calling through. So we're going to look at two plants, or we can say a plant and a tree, but they're both intimately connected. So the first one is Angelica, Archangelica, which in our work at Quantum Plant Healing, we had as a chakra ally for the Soul Star chakra, which is really our connection to all that is in the higher realms, or we can say our planet, our connection to divinity, which is still very much linked to our crown chakra, which is we also work with St. John's wort. So these are plants that really hold a lot of light, but as a plant in traditional kind of folk medicine, very connected to Nordic and Icelandic traditional folk medicine, which when we see the tree we're going to work with will also make sense. I really consider this to be the feminine aspect of Archangel Michael, which for those of you who are part of our astral clearing session on Sunday was done on Michaelmas with the direction of Archangel Michael in support with Raphael and Gabriel. And as a consequence, many of the energies that came through was Michael slaying the dragon, or the lower mind dragon consciousness, the fallen dragon energy, we can even say the demonic energy that comes with all of that. That's Michael's job. That's what he wanted to do. But at the same time, perhaps now we want to be in a more lighter energy, not necessarily having to spear dragons and those kinds of things, all of which is very much about ourselves. So this plant helps reduce anxiety, which probably is a good thing right now.
So I think it's a really good plant because many of the things that are coming to the surface have also to do with soul memories. Yeah. So this is a good point now to use the help of the plants, of our guides, of our higher self. We all have access to all of those things, but we need to be in alignment to be able to call in some of those galactic codes that we have within ourselves, angelic help, spiritual guides. We need to be able to call them in and work together for this last point of the process. There is light and there is support here. Absolutely.
And I think that's a really good point, because this is a plant that's good for memory and cognitive skills. Of course, we've talked about this on previous shows about why many people are suffering from deletion or absence of those memories with things like Alzheimer's and so on and so forth. But really and truly what we're looking at is the lack of remembrance about our cosmic selves. Now, I've often found it slightly intriguing or ironic that many people have expressed they want to be multidimensional, but the moment they start to feel their multidimensional selves, it freaks them out because they have to contemplate or confront the astral planes, which is where normally people back off. And it's a bit like, we can say it's spiritual avoidance, or you know, chasing the light and the love without necessarily having to look at what balances that back out. There's light and dark, and the two have to be put into balance. But once we've got those two things into balance and understood that they're not necessarily good or bad, or light and evil, we understand that we can start to connect to our cosmic selves, and our multi-dimensional selves come online, which is where the pathway to stellar nations is great, or even a studying of the stars. But I would like to put a question to everyone watching this. What do you understand by being multi-dimensional? In your experiences, how has that already manifested for you? Has it manifested at all? If it hasn't, maybe then these are the plants to work with, because they're going to activate that. If you haven't done an awful lot of inner work or shadow work, probably your multidimensional self has been somewhat switched off. Maybe if you had an overdependence on certain medications in your life that dumbed down your senses, maybe some of the offered medications in the last few years. All of these were part of the inversion to stop us connecting, or we can say remembering, our multidimensional selves.
Good. And I know that there is light at the end of this tunnel. We're already seeing the possibilities of the new reality that we're ready to live. So it just requires a little bit of a push now through these last part.
Right, and the other just bullet point here is that this plant fights cancer, which is another way of saying that it really helps us to look at and deal with the emotional traumas that causes the physical disturbances in our body that Western medical.
When it comes to cancer, you biodecode the emotions behind that. They have to do with resentment. Is the most important one. Are you holding on to resentment towards somebody or something that happened to you, and then that develops into the body talks to you about, you need to let go of that so you can process it.
Right, and a really good way to this medicine is, as usual, in the tincture form. I would suggest you can make a tea from it. It's got quite a strong taste. Yeah, it's a little bit like fennel sometimes, I think. Yeah, I recommend it as a tincture. Really beautiful plant. It's a biennial, only comes to seed in its second year, and has these wonderful kind of almost flute-like stems. And it has a lot of medicine in the root. To dig up an Angelica root in its second year, as the plant's gone to seed and dropping all of its seeds, which is also a part of its medicine, you can do a really wonderful seed tincture from Angelica. Then you can really explore this plant, and by spending time with Angelica, you really are opening up your connection to the angelic realms, particularly Archangel Michael. So
that's it.
Yeah, it is on this one. So, here's another tree that has a big connection to Archangel Michael, which is the yew tree, the oldest living being on the planet. 260 million plus years, apparently, in linear time. It's pretty much seen everything, which is useful because it can also tell us pretty much anything about our experience here on planet Earth. In the Norse traditions, really, although many people say that Yggdrasil is the ash tree, it makes a lot more sense that Yggdrasil is the 9 worlds of the yew tree. It's the tree of eternity. It's seen everything. Really, really incredible tree. Not like any other tree, really. The more time you spend with it, very connected to the blood, very connected to the womb, very connected to creation, but also very, very good at transmuting karma. So to work with the yew tree, actually, many people say that the yew tree is toxic, that you shouldn't consume the berries. You can consume the berries, otherwise known as arrows, but you should not eat the seeds. They are toxic. They will cause purging. So many of you might need purging. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that this is the way to do it, but if you are able to somehow get a yew essence, or maybe even have a yew tree, because there are, I think, 9 different species, Bella, across the world, including a Pacific yew that grows up on the northwest coast of the US. There is a Mexican yew that grows in certain parts of Mexico. There is a Japanese yew tree. In fact, it grows on most continents in different forms. However, it is particularly endemic in Britain. There are more ancient yew trees in Britain, which is also very, very significant at this point as the energy of the goddess returns. The Blessed Isles role in all of this, the restoration of Britannia, the Davidic spirit of Britain as a unified being rather than the fragmented being that it's become through its division, even just into the 4 so-called countries, we can say, but even the Isle of Man is considered an overseas territory, which is bizarre because it actually sits at the sacred center of the whole of the British Isles. So yew tree is very connected to all of these things. It's also the living embodiment of an Elohim being, a real angel and archangelic being, in this case, again, Michael, manifesting temporarily like a spirit passing through our realm. But because of how long these beings live for, what for them is an instant, really, in the etheric realms, for us looks like several thousand years. So this is a tree of deep wisdom. And if you have any yew trees near you, particularly if you're in Britain at this time, I absolutely recommend going and sitting under a yew tree. There's lots in Scotland, lots in Wales, and asking the tree for that connection to all that is, because at the opposite end of our chakra system, Bella, we have the yew tree as our earth star chakra ally. And so in that way, the feminine aspect of Archangel Michael sits at the soul star. The more, I would say, masculine, although again, these are kind of fluid ideas, sits at the earth star and connects us as above, so below. And in doing so, it allows our toroidal field to be fully activated, which of course is really, really important. And this is another tree. Taxus baccata is its more traditional name, and Taxol is a medicine that was developed also to fight cancer. So again, we can see that there are many similarities between these two trees, but also just want to emphasize again that the yew tree is considered to be toxic, so be very careful about the medicine that you use. But if you have one near you, then this could be a good time to make an essence.
It could be just a connection with the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is our final thing we want to share today, is that we are now into week 4 of our group astral clearings and teachings every week, and more people are joining us. They're getting more and more powerful. The one we just talked about from Sunday, really under the auspices of Archangel Michael, has helped really shift a lot of density in the collective. From my own astral meditations, that was made very clear to me. We are now seeing the effects of that through the goggle box. Again, just because something looks bad doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Normally, when we purge something out, it doesn't look great, right? If we have our head down the toilet and we're purging, it doesn't look great, but it feels a lot better afterwards. So I think it's important to have these kinds of, I wouldn't say visual images, because that's not necessarily good, but the idea of what a purge is, what a release is. So we have put together a special offer for this week, which is a donation-based offer, all of which you can find more about on the page in the show notes here. But essentially, we're offering 2 special editions this week, because we know that many people are struggling financially. We have got a more limited, we can say, if you are only able to donate a small amount, we will include you in the astral clearing aspect of this week's session. However, due to limitations on the numbers of people we can have on Zoom, we've had to make a distinction between people who just want to receive the clearing with a minimum donation level, and also those who would like to be on the live call as part of the clearing session. So again, please check out the website. We've tried to make this as affordable as possible. And I also want to say heartfelt thanks to all of the people who've signed up for the whole entirety of this program, because you're helping us to anchor the energy. And now what we're seeing is that many people, with their families' permissions, are inviting their family members in, they're bringing their children into the space, and now this has kind of exponentially grown so much even since last week. And we really are doing this because we want to help lift the density in the collective, but each and every one of us needs to show up for this ourselves, right, Bella?
Yeah, it's not a healing. It's one of us being responsible and clearing what doesn't serve us anymore, so we can evolve.
Yeah, and all of the things that are in the news right now, however, we've all been affected by these things, and probably that is most people on the planet in some way or other, because we're all in this together. We don't any longer have to suffer with those things. We can release them, but also with the release comes the opportunity to look clearly and then do the healing work, which actually comes down to you, the individual. So I think that's about it, right, Bella? Is there anything you wanted to
No, that's about it. I think lots of compassion for everybody. Everybody's going through this. And it's the last few weeks. There are tools. We have the plants that will help us. We have the trees to help us ground as well. Having a bath with the plants that we recommend during the clearings is also really good to keep on removing the density of our bodies and our astral bodies, mental bodies. So do something that is connected to self-love and self-care for yourself, especially over this period of time.
So that's it for this week, everybody. Hopefully you found this useful. As always, we're trying to map out what is possibly going to happen over the next couple of weeks, but also just to give those kind of anchor points to try and navigate between them. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for this week. Hope to see many of you on Sunday. And if not, then we'll see you all again for a call in the very near future. Bye for now.
Bye.